Right, 11 o'clock. Nobody here. There have been 2 visitors because one person has given me a thumbs up. Might have to go back to 10 o'clock next week. Well, no, next hangout. Right. I'm in pretty good shape tonight. Well, for me, so it shouldn't be too much of like coughing and spluttering. As I said before, the current software I've got tends to magnify anything like that. Well, a lot of ground to cover. The main theme is real victims and hexes, but there's quite a few other things. John Worboys, the so-called black cab rapist, was up in court recently. Whoever you are, welcome back. Welcome back. John Worboys, the black cab rapist, was up in court recently, and he's pleaded guilty to drugging and sexually violating 4 more women. So looks like he'll be behind bars for the duration. Certainly I won't live to see him paroled. Yeah, really nasty piece of work, that. Something here. This is something from South Carolina. No, is it South Carolina? Let's have a look. This is a newspaper, an online newspaper. Yes, this is not necessarily good. Oh, North Carolina. Accusers change approach on sexual assault in North Carolina. They're going to use this victim-centered rubbish again, which is with this fresh understanding of victim trauma, prosecutors confront long-standing biases that jury members have about how people behave after sexual assault. No. This, I have to stress, this is nothing new. This idea that women aren't able to remember what happened, or I just froze. That's another one, and they continue relationships with men who've raped them. This is garbage, you know. The reality is that the shortcomings of identification evidence, of memory, of human behavior, all this stuff has been acknowledged well over a century. And what they're trying to do actually with this, it's so transparent. They want any time a woman accuses a man of rape, they want him to be convicted. However tenuous, however ludicrous the evidence, they want the guy convicted. You know, hear and believe. And even if no rape happened at that time, you'll have apologists like Kim McGregor and Louise Nichols, as 2 airheads from New Zealand, who claim that the woman was traumatized, yada yada yada. I've actually done a couple of live hangouts on this sort of thing. There's the fraud of tonic immobility. That's one. You might also like to check out man haters and female psychopaths, because I've no doubt that a lot of false rape allegations. I've done 3 Ds as well. 3 Ds of drink, drugs, and delay. Because I've no doubt there are a lot of women out there who make gratuitously false allegations against men that they target men because they've had a run-in with a man or a particular type of man, and it's a calculated act of revenge. And of course, if there's a purported delay, there's if a rape allegation is sufficiently delayed, then there will be no evidence. There will be just she said, he said, and he's on a hiding to nothing. He's got nothing to gain and everything to lose, and she's got nothing to lose. I mean, it amazes me that the people who really don't acknowledge that this sort of thing happens. In that connection, I just added something to, I think it was yesterday, I added this to the timeline. There's a case in Australia. I can only play you the audio, but you'll find Kenan Basic. He's actually spelled Basic, pronounced Basic. He's in Sydney, Australia. He's obviously a fairly recent immigrant. He's got a bit of a thick accent. This was a guy who helped a teenager, a car stalled or whatever. He spent 2 hours fixing it. 2 hours. Afterwards, she hugged him. She got in the car. He followed her for a bit to make sure there was no problem with it, and then he drove off. Then he was arrested. She claimed that he sexually assaulted her, indecently assaulted her, virtually an attempted rape. The idea was, I helped you out, and you got to help me. The poor guy spent 2 weeks in jail. This is a very short clip from Australian television. So if you find longer clips on YouTube.
Kenan Basic lost virtually everything because of a lie: his job, his relationship, and his dignity. He spent 2 weeks in prison, helpless, as his name was dragged through the mud.
Never been jail, never had criminal record, nothing, It was terrible, especially when, you're innocent, you're not supposed to be there.
Today, on his birthday, he was gifted freedom.
It wasn't until we pressed the police to investigate the matter further that they did, and they, in fact, prosecuted the alleged victim for lying.
Caitlin Gray claimed Basick indecently assaulted her moments after this hug. He had just helped fix her car.
I always help people, all my life, and this is the first time that snake bites me.
All charges against Basick were withdrawn today. Now it's his accuser who is facing charges for contempt of court, fabricating evidence and lying to police. 7 News understands the turning point for Basick came during Gray's latest police interview. When she was questioned by detectives, she broke down and admitted she made everything up.
Justice has been served, and we're very happy with the outcome.
As Basick begins to rebuild his life, there is one thing he will change.
Probably never have help again, because I don't want that happen again.
Tom Saker, 7 News.
I mean, this was a guy who was, if not a saint, then a good Samaritan, a classic good Samaritan. I know that he would have helped an older woman, or even a bloke, And as I find it, and no good deed goes unpunished. Why would any woman do something like that? If she had a punch up with a guy if he'd been rude to her or something, or a work colleague. No, this is the guy who helped her. But didn't ask anything. Didn't even ask for the hug. And absolutely outrageous. I hope the bitch gets 10 years. That's that case is it's worse than to me. It's worse than a lot of these outright false rape allegations. Absolutely outrageous. Right, it's a few other things here. Wendy Wild, or Wendy Rosher, I suppose her name was. She was born Wendy Wild. She kicked the bucket at the age of 57. She was one of the false accusers of Rolf Harris, the only one who was proved to be a false accuser because his conviction was quashed in 2017 for the imaginary assault on her. It's really amazing, actually, that that he was convicted. It's a case that should never got. It's a case that should never got near a courtroom because if he had been anywhere near that community centre in 1969-70, there would have been a paper trail a mile wide, but there was nothing at all. He was convicted. Well, there was another so-called witness who turned out to be a lunatic, as Rolf's investigator found out. William Merritt found out, proved. But I mean, there would be a paper trail, and anyway, she's kicked the bucket. I read an article about her on the Birmingham Live website. It referred to as Rolf Harris's youngest victims. I sent him an email, which I to several journalists. I think the editor, several people on site anyway. And surprise, surprise, the next day when I checked it, it hadn't presumably been edited, but the link had been removed. There's a similar article on the Daily Mail website, the Daily Mirror website, has also been removed. So perhaps somebody else emailed the Mirror. There's still a couple, 2 or 3 websites with the same rubbish on it, but so you know, occasionally they do listen to us little people. On a similar subject, Cardinal George Pell is his appeal is ongoing in Australia. This is, if anything, this case is even more ridiculous than the Rolf's conviction in that, because from what I've looked at this quite a bit, he's meant to indecently assaulted 2 choir boys, two kids, at a time when there would have been dozens of people present. He was convicted. He didn't take the stand at his trial. He should have done. No doubt he should have done. But he's barrister, been a top barrister who, not very top in my opinion, but this shows these historical cases. I mean, you know, juries can be very, very fickle at times. At other times, they can be totally gullible. They think that if 3 or 4 people say something, it must be true. Here, you actually had, it was actually one witness said something, about 20 others said the opposite. Pell couldn't. So I'm hoping he's. I mean, the appeal is. I think the appeal was over, but the judges are pondering it. I don't know what there is to ponder, but I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of stuff being written about Pell. Said that he covered up covered up child abuse, child sexual abuse in the church. I don't know how true that is. A lot of things people seem to forget about or not to understand about these sort of so-called cover-ups is that if a case is thoroughly investigated and it turns out that the person concerned, there is not enough evidence to charge him, or if it's clearly innocent, or if no crime has been committed, then what they do is they suppress the details. The authorities suppress the details. In fact, we've seen this in recently quite openly. If you look at some of this ludicrous Mueller report, the details that were released by the Attorney General. It's standard practice in the United States as people's names are redacted to protect them from scholars. If somebody isn't charged, then they won't be charged, and any incidental people will have their names redacted in order to protect their reputations. So this is, I think that may have happened. Having said that, there have been quite a few cases of actual child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church worldwide. So I mean, the big guilty pleas and everything. Something I keep my eye on. A woman. This is from Chichester. A woman is said to have been a woman in her 40s, said to have been gang raped by a group of men in their 30s in Chichester. It says a woman has been reported she was repeatedly raped by several men in the doorway of a disused Argos shop. on the evening of June the 19th by a gang of men she described as tanned, slim, and aged in their 30s. It's nobody's been arrested, and it said the distressing rape was not reported until 5 days later. Now, according to this nonsense of this ludicrous victim-centered rubbish, that's because she was too traumatized to report it. There are two other very likely explanations, two more likely explanations in my humble opinion. One is that she had consensual sex with this group and then cried rape. You'll find many cases like that on the False Rape timeline. Julie Gavin, probably the most infamous and most notorious, is Daniel Ladonia of the Hofstra gang rape hoax, but there are many others. And another, probably the most plausible explanation here is there was no attack at all. So I hope she wasn't gang raped, you know. But either way, a crime was being committed. So I'm going to keep my eye on that for the next couple of weeks. Maybe even drop a line to the relevant police press office. Yet another lunatic has accused Donald Trump of rape. This, I mean, you may have seen this. A woman named E. Carroll, who that horrible so-called feminist Jessica Valenti wrote an article, "Our Rapist President." She takes Carroll at face value, and she's listed all these other women who accused Trump as though these allegations mean anything. Many of these allegations have actually been debunked. At least one woman, I think it was the New York Times, stitched her up. So the New York Times interviewed her, and she was very unhappy with the way the paper reported the story. But it wasn't sexual assault. It was meant to be inappropriate behaviour, whatever that means. And there was another woman who accused Trump of sexual harassment. And the Trump team produced after he'd allegedly sexually harassed her, they produced an email to the effect that she was up in a restaurant and she wanted Trump to come along, and he politely declined. Next thing, he's been accused of sexual harassment. Well, I'm sorry if a woman has been sexually harassed, if she's so traumatized, she doesn't invite this guy to an opening of a restaurant. So, sorry, doesn't happen. Does not happen. But E. Carroll, she gave an interview to Anderson Cooper, who seemed to be coming on to him at the end. I don't know if anyone's told her about Anderson Cooper, but he was trying to give her space to tell her story about how she was raped by Trump in a department store 20+ years ago, and he was so embarrassed. You'll find several cuts of the interview on YouTube, and he thought eventually better of it. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. In the UK, a group of feminist airheads in the sexual grievance industry are trying to prosecute the Crown Prosecution Service because they're not bringing enough. They're not getting enough prosecution. They're not getting enough successful prosecutions. In their opinion, a successful prosecution is when a man is convicted of rape, even if he's innocent. They go about 1.7% conviction rate or something. They're already prosecuting far too many weak cases. I mean, I'll give you a case here from this is 2004. This is you'll find a lot more recent cases, but this is a case in Wales. James Crook. In May 2004, a former girlfriend accused him of raping her. She said he forced her to have sex in 2002. Before the allegation, in February 2004, she'd sent him a Valentine's Day card. Well, and how can they prosecute? I mean, only a jury of 12 feminists would even consider. It's absolutely ludicrous. There's so many of these cases. Liam Allen was back in the news recently. He and his mob having a protest outside the High Court, the Royal Court of Justice. I've got an entry of it for him on the timeline. I'll add some more to it. He's a likable kid, but I think he's a bit gullible. Yeah, I mean, okay, he's a criminology student, but I think he's a bit. Well, he can be highly intelligent and gullible. The woman who his ex-girlfriend apparently begged him for sex, who accused him of raping her 16 times. I said, did she go to the police, or did she go to a rape crisis centre or rape counsellor and was then advised? And he won't reply. He won't reply to it. I think, as I've said to him, and I say to the world, rape crisis centres should be shut down because they encourage women to make false allegations of rape. I'm looking for. I've been looking for more information about that case. But I mean, I've no doubt that he was stitched up by one of these hags. So I looked up fairly recently. It was reported in January this year. A woman, Karen Redding, is that her name? Karen Redding. She reported a former boss, Keith Walker, when she started a job at the age of 17. This is on the theme of real victims and head cases. We're on the theme now. She 35 years ago, when she was 17, she was working for this guy, and she claimed he sexually assaulted her. She reported it to the police in October 2016. You can imagine that. And she wasn't raped. She said initially she was sexually harassed, and then it became a sexual assault. He offered her, he said it was a misunderstanding, so he offered her a 5-week salary on a basis she could return to work following the misunderstanding. I don't know how much of a misunderstanding it was, but now Karen Redding says that here, my daughter had reached 17 and moved to London, and I struggled with that. I was back in therapy. I've had counselling for years and reached 50. I mean, about after 1983, I got mixed up in drink and drugs. I didn't care about anything about myself. I had no feeling. I always thought it was my fault because I let it happen. There was a lot of anger, panic attacks, and flashbacks. Every cliche in the book from the rape trauma nonsense. During the assault when I was 17, I was in shock and I froze. Yeah, I just froze. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just absolute. If this incident happened the way she said it did, I mean, there's no reason for any woman to behave like that. I'm sorry, I don't care. And Landon Gambles. I've played this clip before. This is Gambles, a head case. This is from an American university. Here she is.
I was raped numerous times by my boyfriend. And the university is aware of that, but he's still back on campus.
And she goes on to say, my abuser confessed to administrator they raped me and he got suspended from school. And his roommate, as well as the school administrator, testified he confessed to rape. No, they didn't, you lying cunt. Unbelievable. she's seriously not right in the head, these women. Now, compare those. Now, let's deal with let's deal with a woman who is a real victim, but is in danger of becoming a head case. Fern Champion. Fern Champion is a real rape victim. She's from London, like me, and she was raped a while back. And last year, 2 years ago, she was raped by travelling. This is from the BBC website. 2 years ago, Fern Champion was raped by travelling abroad, a gap year, struggling to get help back in the UK. It was this point I felt a complete crisis. So there was a 2-year waiting list for therapy. He first started me while she was unconscious on the sofa and raped her repeatedly throughout the night. She slipped without consciousness. So she reported this to the police, but no one's ever been caught, I presume. Yeah, I mean, I'll take her at her word. I mean, she reported it to police, so genuine victims do report to the police. But she couldn't get. She was on a waiting list for therapy at the rape crisis. Let's see if this will play. This is from This is on Facebook. Yeah, here we are. Let's get some sounds of it.
I was then raped repeatedly, throughout the night.
It's a bit of a silence.
I tried again in January, it was still closed. I tried again in March, it was still closed. And it was at that point that I felt like I myself was in complete crisis. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. I felt so completely helpless. My mental health just felt like it was deteriorating at a rate beyond what I could control. I was having severe problems with my sleep, nightmares, flashbacks, and strong signs of PTS or PTSD. And so at that point, I turned to my employer, to my manager at work. That's when things started to get better. That's when I was then able to access help, because she took complete control of the situation. I can't imagine what it must be like for those women who are already not in that position where they have an employer to even turn to, or someone who can offer that help that they've offered me.
Rape crisis says chronic underfunding means they can't provide vital support services.
And that is because of failures from government level, from local commissioners. There's many different reasons why, but in the end, it boils down to a lack of resourcing.
Money.
It boils down to money.
£7 million they provide for victims of sexual. The government, £7 million.
Government do talk about the commitments that they've made to supporting survivors, but I mean, Fern is evidence in and of itself that it's not enough, and it's not reaching those specialist organisations.
What do you need?
Vast amounts more. We don't even know how much more we would need, because we can't measure demand, because we're having to close waiting lists, which means, as Fern has explained, that not everyone who even wants to get on the waiting list, which we can measure, which we know is over 6,000 people, are able to even get to that stage, and it's just not acceptable.
You don't need more funding. You need to be shut down, you smug bitch. Fern has started a petition, which is right. Okay, Fern, what you need is not therapy. You don't need months and years of therapy and counselling and rubbish like that. What you need is tough love. And Uncle Alexander is going to give it to you right now. But what you need to do is you need to move on with your life. It's as simple as that. Yeah, I've never been I've never been raped all night, but in 1993, November 1993, I was a victim of a serious assault by 3 dudes who I was only spent a night in hospital, but I went down with an opportunistic infection afterwards, and I hardly moved for 2 or 3 days, and I could have died. And I had post-traumatic stress disorder for literally for years afterwards, and I've got permanent physical injuries as well. I've got a back injury. In 1991, this is probably before you were born. 01. Well, yeah, you look fairly young. But 1991, there was a 6-year-old girl in Bradford named Roxana Khan. I remember this at the time. She was in the park, and she was attacked by a dog. I'm sorry, I'm going to take my top off of very here. It's a bit hot tonight. The days are getting shorter already, would you believe? Roxana Khan was attacked in her local park by a dog that literally nearly ripped her face off. I probably would have killed her if I was sort of shaking her like a doll. Right, I had a serious problem with the video when I downloaded it. The last 20 minutes or so were missing, so I'm going to do my best to reconstruct it. Fern Champion. Now, I was talking about Roxana Khan, wasn't I? She was 6 years old. She was attacked in a park, and if I can get the link, and this creature nearly ripped off her face. Now, as you might imagine, she was somewhat traumatized by that. In September 2006, she gave an interview to the Telegraph and Argus. The face looks okay to me, in fact it looks very good. So, but I mean, she suffered terrible injuries. She said, "I'm still terrified of dogs." He wouldn't be, wouldn't you be? But she's obviously moved on with her life, and that, Fern, is what you have to do. There's a saying that if you fall off a horse, you should get straight back on it, which didn't do Christopher Reeve any good. But no, seriously, you have to put this stuff behind you. You don't need counselling. You don't need therapy. You need a little bit of space, a little bit of kindness, and tough love. And so that's what I'm going to leave you here now. I'm going to talk a little bit, not about rape, but murder. All right. All trauma, be it physical, purely physical, and psychological, or purely psychological. Psychological trauma can destroy us, yeah. And here's an example of how it can destroy you or how not. September 2000. You won't remember this, but undoubtedly you've seen her photographs. There was an 8-year-old girl, Sarah Payne. Angelic photograph of her you'll find online. She was murdered by a paedophile named Roy Whiting. She was out in the country one day with her 3 siblings and her parents, and she disappeared. Started as a missing child investigation. She was found 2 or 3 weeks later in a shallow grave, and it was a massive story at the time. Sarah's mother, Sarah, went on to campaign against, but she became a campaigner. She's got Sarah's Law brought in. I don't entirely agree with that, because these sort of laws, not only do they stigmatise people unnecessarily, some people, but but they don't work. In the United States, you have people having to sign a sex offenders register after being convicted of public urination, which is outrageous. But whatever. She became a campaigner. Sarah's father, Michael Payne, it took him 14 years, but he committed suicide by proxy. He started off beating his wife. She divorced him. He began doing all sorts of silly things, committing wanton acts of criminal damage. He served a jail sentence. He glassed his own brother in a pub. He served a jail, I think it was something like 18 months. And in September 2014, he was found dead in his armchair. He literally drunk himself to death. Sarah Payne, on the other hand, she's got letters after her name now. She was a humble barmaid before. Now, the point of that is that trauma can destroy you. I would say it can be the making of you, but it can only destroy you if you allow it to. Now, the question you have to decide, Fern, is do you want to be Sarah Payne or Michael Payne? I suggest you should be Sarah. Something I've noticed, it's all about real victims and head cases. The women who suffer the least make the most noise. You don't strike me as one of those women. We'll give you an example. London Gamble, who I've a clip of her hair somewhere. She was a student in, was an American student, and she. This is a pathetic case. Listen to this.
I was raped numerous times by my boyfriend, and the university is aware of that, but he's still back on campus.
She's raped numerous times by him, and she kept going back for more. And she was quoted, my abuser confessed to administrator that he raped me and he got suspended from school. And his roommate, as well as the school administrator, testified he confessed to rape. No, he didn't. You liar. London Gamble is seriously not right in the head. A lot of these women, most of these women who claim to have been raped at university, are not right in the head, including a couple who committed suicide. I say you don't have to go down that road. Yeah. Let me mention a couple of cases. Elizabeth Smart was 14 years old when she was kidnapped from her bed by a religious fanatic, and him and his wife. They held her for, well, it was a document, a biopic about it, the Elizabeth Smart story, or something like that. She was actually rescued. She's gone on to be, she's a married woman now and has no ill effects. The Cleveland Captives, you'll have heard of them. Two of them, Amanda Berry and Gina De Jesus, a year after they were freed, a year after they escaped, they sound like Ivy League graduates rather than ordinary working class women. Mary Vincent, this is a terrible case. Mary Vincent was 15 years old when she was hitchhiking. I think she was a runaway, and she was picked up by a guy named Larry Singleton, and he raped her repeatedly. They hacked off her arms below the elbow, threw her in a ravine. Miraculously, she survived. When he was brought to book, he was given a mere 12 years and released after 8, if you credit that. This is in California. In fact, he was so outrageous that they had to keep him. He had to live in a caravan in the grounds of San Quentin prison. Otherwise, he would have been lynched. Eventually, he went back to Florida. where he murdered a prostitute and died on death row, died from cancer while awaiting execution. Mary Vincent, you'll find videos of her on YouTube. She had a son. She was ended up being abandoned by her husband or a lover. Have a look at Mary Vincent and ask her if she had to choose between being raped or having her arms hacked off, which she thinks she'd choose. Well, obviously there's no choice, but you know, I mean, which is the most traumatic? You know, she was traumatised physically a little bit for the rapes. Well, maybe a lot, but it's temporary, and she got over that. But you can't go over losing your arms, you know, obviously. So you have to choose, Fern. Do you want to be one of these demented hags who... Well, no, I'm not saying you... But like one of these demented hags who's maybe been groped or maybe not groped at all, and he's in and out of therapy and counselling for years on end. Or do you want to face up to your demons and move on? You've got to move on with your life. If you don't, you'll end up like Michael Payne, or you'll end up a raving lunatic or something. So that's what I have to say have a look at there's lots of videos on YouTube of women who suffered terrible rape. Not just women who've been raped, but women and men who've had, you know, life-shattering experiences. They've lost limbs, they've had major surgery, they've suffered from this, that and the other, and they get over it. And by the same token, there will be women and men who've suffered barely at all, and they're in and out of therapy and counselling for the rest of their lives. So that's what you have to decide. Do you want to become a survivor, a true survivor, or a head case? I suggest if you have anything to do with rape crisis, you'll end up a head case. But the rape crisis centres, I've made a video about them. I've written a long article about that. They don't help people like you. They encourage women who are seriously wrong in the head to make false allegations of rape. You'll find documentation on this. I've written to the DPP and then the Attorney General about it. I've been ignored. But it's up to you. It's up to you, Fern. You have to choose which you want to be. But yeah. Anyway. And perhaps you can take up yoga or something, but you don't need all this counselling and this rubbish like that. You have to move on with your life. Okay, that's about all I was going to say. It's a pity that the video broke down, but I said more or less the same as I would have said, as I did say. Thank you for coming, those of you who did turn up. The next Full Slope Timeline live hangout will probably be in about 2 weeks, Thursday again, probably at 10 o'clock this time. Okay, that's the end of this live stream.